This is going to be a little bit of an update on myself and a nature walk at the same time. And it's an update on my recovery from opiate addiction. I'm not going to name myself, and if anyone identifies my voice or who I am, please respect my privacy. I am almost 58 years old. I've been using drugs, hard drugs, since I was 16. I'm where I was addicted to drugs at 16. I started them younger. IV drugs when I was 17. Heroin, opiates weren't very popular in my neighborhood then, so I used PCP, LSD, Coke, and probably like most younger people, I shot anything I could once I learned about the rush you got from it. A lot of things drove me into drugs or brought me into drugs. It wasn't just that I took the wrong pill and got addicted. I had a lot of emotional distress as a young person. I got into opiates in the early 90s with the release of the lower tabs onto our society, which I think until they are gone, this plague of opiate use will not stop. They're what caused it. And codeine was just as good a painkiller as Loratab. It just didn't really get you high, and what high it did get you wasn't that good. Of course, there were people that did abuse it, but it was not like it is today. Loratab's the way in for probably 99% of the young addicts today, and was for myself in 1991. From there, I got addicted to Dilaudids, and someone I knew had cancer, and they were getting a lot of them and weren't using them, so I was taking them for myself. And it's when I first realized the physical addiction, where the withdrawals began. I never ran out of the thing, so until the person who I cared about very much passed away. And I knew what withdrawal was, and I knew some gang of guys in my neighborhood that were using heroin, who were my age. And I hooked up with them, and from there I just, learned the secrets of the trade, I guess. Where to cop, who to, I met people. I became somewhat known in the dope neighborhoods. I'm not going to get into money and, lying and stealing. I've heard a kid once brag about how good a liar he was. It's like, really? Where are you going to use that? You're going to join the CIA or something? Become a spy? It's not really a great attribute. Honesty is much more to be able to say I'm a super honest person rather than I'm an extremely good liar. I came off it the first time in 1996. So I went 91 to 96. I did a cold turkey, and I came off it relatively fast at that time. I was in my 30s. I had a job in construction. I was fairly healthy. But, throughout, I stayed clean for 3.5 years from that. My daughter was a young baby. I quit because she was going to be born in a month from the day I quit. So, I was motivated. I lost the job. I wasn't able to cope with the anxieties that I was having. But I really didn't do anything for myself at the time. Meetings I had tried, I really, truthfully, I couldn't stand them. I couldn't stand the philosophies of the higher power and all the scrubs that were there, and people just bullshitting, and people that I knew were lying, and the division between opiates and crack people, which still is today. I'm going to go to what is aiding me right now. and which I suggest to everybody and anybody. One thing is to always be aware of your footing. This has been a great, great help to me, walking in the woods. I have to take a break, I think, because this is a little difficult. Let's see. I don't want to go sliding down this hill. Which I did, but I landed perfectly. And I've noticed a lot of analogies doing this kind of thing to life and recovery. And that is good footing and keep your eye on what you're doing. And I have a great example of that up here. That almost happened to me a couple days ago. I've always had a problem with the concept of God, and coming off that, I remember the first time the struggle with hell and heaven and God and judgment and, so many thoughts going through your head. Put it on the back burner. I mean, I've come to the point where I spell God with an N, capital N for nature. No devil, none of that old dusty religion for me. I'm sorry. If it helps you, it helps you. But I don't think it helps most. And I think a lot of these young people ending up dead today struggle with that, and they don't have any answers. Pretty early off, I started walking in the woods, fairly close to my house. I'm in the city. There was a park when there was some unused portion of that park, and I would go very early as not to run into anybody, because I had a lot of anxiety at first. And I would observe the deers, because they're pretty populated in the city. I had been walking the woods for a lot of years, but I never really looked at what I was, I just walked and thought. Now I try, I do. I identify plants, animals, the history of the area that I'm walking on. I mean, who walked on it before me? The tribes of Indians that lived here. I'm on methadone maintenance, and I will be for the rest of my life. And at first it was a problem for me to accept that, but I have come to accept and understand that addiction is not a moral issue, it is a health issue. That was 100% true. And believe me, I have fought this, and I used to say, I don't want to go on another drug. Admittingly, it is difficult at first. Where I live, there are 3 clinics. 2 of them, as long as you're clean, you take care of your business, you have a job, you can get takeouts. Takes about a year. You'll got to go once a week. And you can eventually work yourself up to once a month. But you got to put, and it's possible to put it behind you. I do not like the idea that you always got to be thinking about it. You always got to be constant vigil that, it's like the animal's going to leap on you from a tree. Not true. I came out of this more than that one time. And as I got older, the withdrawals lasted much longer and became much more intense. And this time I figured out a lot of things, because methadone doesn't keep you high. Makes you tired a little bit. But you do go through an awful lot of the same things emotionally that you do when you come off cold turkey. You just don't have the physical damage. Because that staying awake for 30 days, not being able to eat, everything is like a complete nightmare. And I've figured out where the anxiety was coming from. And that is that you experience true horror when you come off of opiates. And once you're off and they're cleaned out, that horror is like a shadow, and you think that it's something real that is going to affect your life and come back at you, when it's a memory of the withdrawal. I've experienced people dying in front of me, loved ones. I was alone with my father when he died, and I was with 2 other people when they died. I mean, right then and there, and I saw a child die when I was young. None of that equates to the horror that I remember. So the horror is from the withdrawal. And that memory has to be acknowledged, and acknowledge that it is not real. It was a symptom of the withdrawal. Trying to figure out what opiates are, why, you constantly got to feed yourself. It's a waste of time wondering about all this shit. The best thing to do is find other things to fill your mind up. I started reading a lot. I always did, but it took me like 2 months to read a book, because I'd always start daydreaming. Now I can read maybe 3 books a month. I probably read more than that, but I do a lot of research. I'm reading a lot about the Indian tribes that lived here before we did. And truthfully, alcohol was a big part of the downfall of those tribes. And the people that gave it to them knew it. Just like the people that give you or your kid this heroin, they know. They want slaves. I mean, I don't think most of them are as dark as that. A lot of these guys that sell the dope are hooked on it. And they're the same as we are, except, they make their money that way to afford the addiction. The things you do, stealing, or in some cases even sexual things, are not things you would normally do. And you have to make your life as not being an open book. The need to confess in our society is impressed on us from an early age, especially with the Catholic religion, and it's absolutely unnecessary. I mean, say I met someone today to be friends with, someone that never used drugs. I'm married, so it's not going to be like a relationship, but a friendship. It's just someone I really got to know, and the most I would tell them is, I had a problem with drugs when I was younger, but I put it behind me. And to go further, just say, a doctor got me, messed up a little bit on pain pills, and it took me a while to get off. There's no problem. You're not being a devil or anything nasty to tell a white lie like that. You don't want people knowing you shot up, because they're going to take 20 steps back. And we come to this idea that, everybody's doing it. The whole world's fucked up. In that small world that we live in, that's true. In a larger world, it is not true. Most people are not on heroin or addicted to pills. They never were, and they never will be. You don't know what time will do and injuries and such, but for the most part, you get to thinking that most people are dark, and they're not. Most people are truthfully in the light and happy. I gotta say, in the last 6 months, and I've only been clean for 6 months, I know in Narcotic Anonymous I wouldn't be considered clean because I'm on methadone, but I do. I've experienced happiness, like maybe because I'm older and I've gone through this before. I was on methadone in 2001, and I worked my way to takeouts, and I started hanging around with one of my older friends who got out of prison, and it ended up bad. I ended up on Xanaxes, like doing 3 and 4 of those bars a day with the methadone, and I was a waste product. I quit the Xanax. It took me 10 years. 2011 it took me to get off them. And, you know, I chipped on them in the last year, but nothing in the last 6 months, and I'm not gonna. Yeah, I know. Especially if there's any NA guys out there shaking their head. I'm not reading my big book. I read tons of books. And I do have friends, and they don't know my whole background. And I don't want them to, because the person I am never was bad or evil that I was made to feel. And most of the thoughts came from myself. Useful things, very useful things. And you do not have to become religious. Mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is a Buddhist technique in which you focus on your breathing, and it's mainly to push all the other thoughts out of your head. And I mean, sometimes when you just come off of this stuff, your thoughts are terrible, and they're crazy, rampant, like you're in a daydream almost constantly. And a daydream's always a nightmare, so a day nightmare. You walk along and all you do is, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And I'm not going to make the sounds like some of those tapes do, and you just keep doing it. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And that's all you need to do when you first start. There's plenty of great guided meditations online, and I started doing those pretty early on. There was a woman, Louise Hay, and it says 40 minutes a day will change your life. And I have had some like mental setbacks, but I've not fallen back into any kind of drug activity. And she was right. I can't say if I didn't listen to that what I'd be like, but I have gained from it, and there's plenty of them. You just want to find the voice that's right for you, and whatever they're talking about. And there are mindfulness, there's positive affirmations, but at night that's how I put myself to sleep. Now, your brain also is readjusting, and that's probably the hardest part of it all. The physical damage you did, knocking all the synapses into different patterns than what are normal. I found that there are these over-the-counter drugs called nootropics. They're not something you get high on. They're not something to abuse. What they do is increase the blood flow in your brain. And I admit they are experimental. There is one prescription, modafinil, but I don't think you really even need that. I found the one called Sunafaram, I don't know how to pronounce it, but very low dose, 5 milligrams. I think you buy 5-gram bottle of it for $40, $30.